Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by offering our most sincere apologies for the delay in the start of this morning's ceremony. We faced technical challenges, but we have persevered through them, and I am pleased to welcome you to the opening ceremony of the 51st annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank. I am Camille Taylor, Head of Corporate Communications at the CDB and Master of Ceremonies for the introductory proceedings. The changes and challenges experienced across the globe following the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic have propelled organizations like the CDB to evolve and adapt, and the lessons learned have been brought to bear on the execution of this year's annual meeting. As a result, while health and safety protocols still limit our ability to gather physically, we have fully embraced the technological platforms which have their idiosyncrasies, but usually deliver for us. And this has allowed us to enhance the execution of this year's event. Taking full advantages of the opportunities presented by technology, our 2021 meeting has been held over a 3-week period, during which we have hosted a series of activities designed to encourage the region to reimagine the future as we recover, regroup to take on the challenges of the post-COVID world. Among other advantages, our hybrid approach has allowed us to reach a wider audience than would typically have gathered for previous meetings. Most importantly, it has allowed us to sound the call of the CDB's mantra, enshrined in this year's theme: innovation, transformation, and sustainable development. This week, the events of the 51st annual meeting are culminating with the deliberations of the bank's highest decision-making body, the Board of Governors. It therefore gives me great pleasure to welcome those of you who are present with us here at the CDB's Conference Center in Barbados, and all of you who are joining us virtually from locations across the region and indeed the globe. We will begin our proceedings with a virtual procession of the Board of Governors, which will be followed by the invocation and then the national anthem of Barbados. We hope all our engagements over the next 2 days will be meaningful and productive. Thank you.
We begin with the Governor for Anguilla, British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, Montserrat, and Turks and Caicos Islands. Premier of Anguilla, Dr. the Honorable Ellis Lorenzo Webster. Governor for Antigua and Barbuda, Prime Minister the Honorable Gaston Brown. Governor for the Bahamas, Senator the Honorable James Kwesi Thompson. Governor for Barbados, Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honorable Mia Amor Motley. Governor for Belize, Prime Minister the Honorable John Antonio Briceño. Governor for Brazil, Roberto Fent Jr. Governor for Canada, the Honorable Karina Gould. Governor for Colombia, Jose Manuel Restrepo. Governor for Dominica, Prime Minister the Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit. Governor for Germany, Norbert Bartel. Governor for Grenada, the Honorable Gregory Bowen. Governor for Guyana, the Honorable Dr. Barrett Jagdeo. Governor for Haiti, the Honorable Michel Patrick Beauvoir. Governor for Italy, the Honorable Daniel Franco. Governor for Jamaica, Dr. the Honorable Nigel Clark. Governor for Mexico, Arturo Herrera Gutierrez. Governor for the People's Republic of China, Dr. Yi Gang. Governor for St. Kitts and Nevis, Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris. Governor for St. Lucia, the Honorable Guy Joseph. Governor for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Honorable Camilo Gonzalez. Governor for Suriname, the Honorable Ahmad K. Akbaseng. Governor for Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Camille Robinson Regis. Governor for the United Kingdom, the Right Honorable Dominic Raab. Governor for Venezuela, Simón Zerpa Delgado. Let's welcome the Vice President of Operations of the Caribbean Development Bank, Isaac Solomon. Vice President Corporate Services and Bank Secretary, Yvette Limones Seal. President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Hyginus Jean Leon. We'll now have the invocation.
Most gracious God, as we both commemorate and commence another year of this Caribbean Development Bank, we celebrate your enduring faithfulness, your stubborn love, and your enabling grace. We thank you for giving us a desire to serve that reflects the kaleidoscope of need around us, for the opportunity to not just complete projects, but to support and empower people, for the opportunity to not just spend funds, but to invest in the transformation of lives and livelihoods. Thank you for the acute sense that we are pressed into service, into making this Caribbean space one in which everyone can recognize their value and realize their dream. Thank you for the generosity of our contributors and the commitment of the President and management of the bank for its growth, its viability, its relevance, and its reach. Continue to grant wisdom to our governments as policies are forged and the tentacles of programs reach every nook and cranny throughout this civilization. Continue to grant time and space to continue this enterprise of arresting poverty and reversing its impact in our lives. And continue to grant this bank the privilege of being an instrument for our collective good and your transcendent glory. This we ask. Amen.
I now invite to the podium President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Jean Leon.
Pleasant good morning to all our governors and directors. I would just like to make a small, short announcement before we proceed. Yesterday, we had the owing to a personal emergency, and that the vice chair the governor of Mexico was deputizing for her. She had hoped, that is Prime Minister Motley, to be with us today and tomorrow. But tragically, as most of you would have heard, and very saddening, her beloved brother, Warren, passed yesterday, and she is not able to join us today. And therefore, I would like to first thank the governor of Mexico, who has again graciously agreed to chair the proceedings today and tomorrow with us. Also to indicate to the board of governors, board of directors, that we at the bank would be sending sincere condolences to not only the Prime Minister, but to a whole family on behalf of the entire CDB community, and that we would wish her speedy, I would like to use the word recovery in grief, and that we are looking forward to being able to welcome her again. I met with her only last week, and she was very, very much excited about delivering her remarks today to you, her vision, her perspective of how she sees the region. So with your permission, I would crave your approval to at least put on record that we would be very open to having the Honorable Prime Minister join us at the next possible opportunity to be able to share with us her perspective, since she is not able to deliver the usual chair's address at this morning's proceedings. So with that, governors, directors, I'd like to continue with the proceedings, but just to indicate that the Vice Chair will proceed on our behalf, and that we will proceed with sending condolences to the Honorable Prime Minister, Mia Mottley. Thank you.
Thank you, President Leon. I now hand over the meeting to the Governor for Mexico, Brenda Guadalupe Shock Cano. She will chair the rest of the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, depending from which country you are joining us today. Before we started, I want to send, on behalf of the Governor of Mexico, our sincerest condolences to Prime Minister Motley. Our thoughts and prayers are with her and her family. Dear governors, it is my pleasure to share the 51st annual meeting of the Caribbean Development Bank on behalf of the Governor of Mexico, Minister Arturo Herrera, who sends you warm regards for this occasion. Unfortunately, this time, due to this lengthy pandemic, we couldn't be able to meet in person in Barbados, which was the host country for this meeting. I want to thank to the management, the staff, and the IT team of the bank, which has made possible the organization and carry out this meeting, despite the technological issues that this virtual format presents. And in this occasion, we also had some issues. So I really want to thank them for all their hard work to make this possible and for everybody to be here today. To continue with our program today, I have the honor to call the Governor for Grenada to deliver his remarks on behalf of the borrowing member. Please, Governor of Grenada, the floor is yours.
Prime Ministers, distinguished Chair of the Board of Governors, fellow governors, directors, Dr. Jean Leon, President of the Caribbean Development Bank, representatives from governments and regional and international institutions, management, and the staff of the Caribbean Development Bank, ladies and gentlemen, good day, morning, afternoon, evening. On behalf of the governors of the borrowing member countries, I am honored to respond to the welcome extended to us by the distinguished chair on this occasion of the 51st annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank. Friends, we are 17 months and counting into the COVID-19 pandemic. Our health systems have been shaken, so too have been our education systems and the normal tempos of our lives. Indeed, the economic, social, and psychological scars are as fresh as ever. That said, they need not be permanent. Immediate policy measures have been rightly focused on protecting lives and livelihood, and by extension, families and firms. As the pandemic continues to unfold, we must continue to provide relief to our people and devise strategies to support economic recovery in the first instance, and ultimately an expansion in national income. In this context, we are of necessity preoccupied with advocating for vaccine equity and addressing vaccine hesitancy to accelerate vaccine take-up, because we accept the fact that vaccination is now a key determinant of economic recovery and growth. While we frontally deal with the immediate difficulties occasioned by the unprecedented crisis, we must also simultaneously address long-standing challenges that COVID-19 has exposed and intensified. Challenges such as persistent low growth, chronic indebtedness, high unemployment, especially among our youth, high cost of energy, income and gender inequalities, food and nutrition insecurities, and over-dependence on a few economic sectors that are themselves highly vulnerable to economic and natural shocks, and weak health, education, and the social protection ecosystems. Added to these long-standing challenges is the devastating impact of climate change, including sea level rise. Undoubtedly, we face many challenges and problems, but we ought not and should not focus on them, lest they multiply and magnify. What we must do is remain laser focused on the solutions, ideally first-based solutions, but second and third best ones should not be ignored. I remind us of the famous words of the first president of this great institution, Sir Arthur Lewis, and I quote, "The British West Indians can solve their own problems, but first, they must find the secret that will put hope, initiative, direction, and an unconquerable will into the management of their affairs." End of quote. As a region, we have to be intentional about the future that we want for ourselves and for the generations to come. Indeed, we have an indelible responsibility to do the right thing and to do things right, to secure a new development paradigm for our region, one that is characterized by persistent high and inclusive growth, ownership and not indebtedness, good paying jobs sustained by innovation, technology, and appropriate skills, gender and income equalities, economic diversification, resilience, inclusion, shared prosperity, and the social cohesion. Importantly also, one that prioritizes people over profits and gratitude over greed. Individual and collective actions, policy coherence, effective leadership, strong institutions and governance arrangements, feasible cohesion within and across institutions, as well as outright collaboration and partnerships will be required to realize that new development paradigm. Additionally, mindset shifts away from limitations and doubt towards possibilities and belief would also be required. For sure, our economic development is inextricably linked to how we see ourselves as a people and what we believe we can achieve. That is high self-efficacy and its resultant high levels of ambition. Indeed, these are extraordinary times, and as such, extraordinary support is needed. Therefore, as countries and government rethink, reset, retool, and reimagine, so too must the Caribbean Development Bank in order to enhance its results orientation, effectiveness, reach, and responsiveness. The financial and technical support that the bank provides must match the enormity of the task at hand, which are becoming securing economic recovery and growth, and pursuing economic transformation towards a new development paradigm. Before I close, I wish to give a special greeting to the new president of the bank on this occasion of its first annual meeting. As a people of faith, we believe that you have been destined to be back in the region for such a time like this. We are glad to have you on board and look forward to working with you and your team. I would also like to take this opportunity to express sincerest gratitude to the outgoing president, Dr. Warren Smith, for his human service to the bank and to the people of the region, and to wish him God's speed in his future endeavors. I close wishing God's continued blessings on this great institution, the great people who support it, and the great people it serves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Bowen, for an inspiring message. Please now let me call on the alternate governor for Venezuela, who will give the remarks on behalf of the regional non-borrowing members.
Honorable Prime Ministers, Governors, representatives of the Member States, representatives of the Caribbean Development Bank, and participants of this 51st annual meeting of the Board of Governors of this financial institution. It is an honor to address you as Governor of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. I take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Higinius Gini Leon, the new President of our CDB, wishing you every success in your work. I also would like to extend our warmest greetings to the Honorable Prime Minister Mia Mottley from Barbados, who is currently serving as Chairman of this Board of Governors. From Venezuela, we welcome the CDB Focus for 2021, which will seek to center its attention on innovation as a necessary element to promote transformative and sustainable development. We currently live in a highly globalized, interconnected, and yet privatized world. Therefore, we are also believers that the true innovation and transformation must come from a new political, social, economic, and financial scheme that force us to diversify and cooperate more deeply despite all the obstacles. But for this, we must also address the threat to the principles of international law and multilateral institutions posed by unilateral and illegal action of powers that seek to prevail over the existing legal order by using illegal coercive sanctions. The Latin American and the Caribbean region faces great challenges, and our Caribbean is one of the most vulnerable regions. The consequences of natural disasters and the subsequent reconstruction efforts require enormous financial resources. National economies are massively hit, and the conditions imposed by global financial organizations negatively impact the resilience of the people of our region. A clear example of this was seen in April of this year with the eruption of the La Soufriere volcano in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which generated a major regional crisis and which adds to the challenges for which this bank must promote resilience. As we enter the third decade of the 21st century, Latin America and the Caribbean also faces serious development dilemmas, among which access to financing is an unavoidable necessity. The predicaments facing the regional economy in the context of the pandemic and post-pandemic of COVID-19 makes it necessary to redouble efforts to promote development cooperation policies that facilitate the optimization of the scarce resources available in the region, as well as to make joint efforts to access international financing. During 2020, the region economy contracted by 7.7%, according to the ECLAC, the preliminary analysis of the Economic Commission of Latin America and the Caribbean last December. Although it is estimated that it will have a positive growth rate in 2021, it will not be enough to reach pre-pandemic levels of economic activity. The ensuing increase in poverty, unemployment, reduction in household incomes, and deepening social inequalities leave the region particularly susceptible to the effects of the global economic crisis and its inhabitants particularly vulnerable to the possible resurgence of the disease as well as the ravage of climate change. In this context, I would like to express the satisfaction with Venezuela values the CDB approach as it directs its action to innovate and transformative and sustainable development. In this context, I must point out the importance that my country attaches to the development of international financing policies aimed at poverty reduction and social welfare under the principles of debt sustainability and respect for sovereignty. We emphasize the importance of assuming a vision that allows us to overcome the cultural approach of the region as a consumer of science and technology, adopting a new view aimed at generating tools that favor the development in a regional model that is sustainable in the economic, social, and environmental spheres. Considering the theme of this meeting, the organization's effort can be directed toward issues such as recovery of successful experiences in the agricultural sector to assist in the design of innovative, productive alternatives, as well as the adaptation and improvement of the educational system and public health system. The promotion of the construction of regional coordination bodies and structures that transcend national borders must be taken into account, always bearing in mind the preponderance of the national states as the mainstay of the development economic policies. Finally, I would like to reiterate, on behalf of Venezuela government, our willingness to contribute to the construction of a regional development model that is respectful of the sovereignty and self-determination of the peoples, economically profitable, socially just, and environmentally sustainable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor, for your kind words. I now give the floor to the alternate governor for Italy, who will give us the remarks on behalf of the non-regional members. Hello, governors. It seems we're having some technical issues, and Estefania, we are not hearing you. Please, if we can ask the IT team of the bank to help us out with this, because we were seeing you and you were, of course, conveying the message, but we were not able to hear you. So please, could you help us out so that the alternate governor for Italy, it's unmuted, please? I don't hear you either, Adam. I don't know if we were supposed to hear something, but it seems that all of the participants are muted right now. Okay. Okay, so I think, Estefania, could you please,
Can you hear me? Oh, thank you so much, and apologies. So we all value technologies, so let's do it. So again, thank you, Chair, and a good day to everyone. I'm honored to be here to represent the Italian Governor for CDB, Mr. Daniele Franco, Ministry of the Economy and Finance, and deliver these remarks on behalf of the non-regional. At the outset, we wish to express our deepest sympathy to the Governor of Barbados for the unfortunate and tragic events that prevented her from joining us today, and thank Mexico for standing in as chair. We welcome this annual meeting and thank the bank for their preparation under very challenging circumstances. The numerous virtual events with expert and distinguished representatives from the region shed further light on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the Caribbean countries, their response and needs going forward. We also wish to congratulate Dr. Leon as new president of the CDB. His chat during the annual meeting with former President Bourne offered an excellent opportunity to look at and learn from the past and reflect on the CDB of the future. Innovation is one of the leitmotifs of this annual meeting. Indeed, innovative and bold policies are imperative to promote the recovery and build foundations for a resilient and sustainable development in the Caribbean region. Innovation is needed also from the side of the CDB for the bank to become an even more trusted partner in the region. An ambitious transformation program is ongoing to strengthen the bank's effectiveness. It is essential to ensure that it delivers the expected results. At the same time, the bank should remain flexible and adapt to the post-pandemic environment to better meet the needs of its clients. We commend the bank for its response to the pandemic, including through additional finance and liquidity support. CDB's achievement in 2020 reflected the dedication of its staff and management. Sincere thanks to all, and the leadership of CDB's previous president, Mr. Smith, whose legacy we wish to acknowledge. Safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines will be key for economic recovery. We welcome CDB collaboration with other organizations, including European Investment Bank, to facilitate affordable access to vaccines for its borrowing member countries. As the Caribbean region emerges from the pandemic, we encourage CDB to progressively shift its support from relief to build back better. Accelerating growth is paramount to bring the high debt level in most countries of the region to a sustainable path. In line with the principles recently reaffirmed at the G20 level under the Italian presidency, we expect a reinforced coordination between multilateral development banks, including CDB and the IMF, in case of countries requesting financing while facing macroeconomic instabilities. The COP26 is just a few months away. We call on CDB to scale up its financing for climate adaptation and mitigation, and welcome the commitment to dedicate between 25 and 30% of its resources to climate finance by 2024. We also urge CDB to set a clear time frame for Paris alignment. With its local knowledge, the bank is best placed to assist Caribbean countries to enhance and implement their nationally determined contributions. Moreover, CDB can help them to create a supportive business environment and develop a pipeline of green, bankable investment projects to further mobilize private investments. Private capital will be critical since the needs are huge and public resources are limited. The engagement of the private sector will be beneficial not only to achieve the transformation to a low-carbon sustainable development model, but also for the innovation and transformative growth it can bring. As the Caribbean region is highly vulnerable to climate change risks and natural disaster, a robust disaster risk management remains a priority. The bank has traditionally supported its borrowing members to recover from natural disasters. This role needs to continue. At the same time, we welcome the new focus on prevention, and we encourage the bank to swiftly implement the updated disaster risk management strategy, working effectively with regional organizations, other multilateral development banks, and bilateral development partners. We wish to congratulate CDB for the successful outcome of the SDF negotiations. The size and composition of the SDF 10 programs will allow SDF to remain focused on poverty reduction, in particular in less developed countries of the region, while increasing resources available to all borrowing member countries, including for disaster risk prevention and recovery. Since a significant proportion of SDF resources will be used to provide technical assistance, we look forward to proposals to strengthen technical assistance strategic focus, improve its delivery, and monitor the impact. As recently reaffirmed by rating agencies, CDB is well capitalized and can grow its portfolio while preserving its rating. We encourage the bank to continue to strike the right balance between a prudent management of its balance sheet, and the pursuit of its development mandate. We call on the bank to develop a solid pipeline of investment projects. We also ask the bank, in consultation with borrowing member countries, to address the issue of undisbursed loans, taking into account the borrower's priority may have shifted because of the COVID pandemic, and adopt all the necessary measures to speed up project implementation going forward while maintaining high quality. Let me conclude reaffirming Italy's support to the Caribbean Development Bank and its mission, and the desire to work with the new president, the bank staff and management, and all CDB members to continue to increase the value proposition of the bank for the region. Stay safe and look forward to when we will meet again next year, maybe in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Governor from Italy. Thank you for your speech, Stefania. We really appreciate all the messages you sent us today. Moving forward with the agenda, I want to take this opportunity to welcome President Jean Leon. As many of you have said today, this is going to be his first annual meeting since he was elected president of the bank. So, dear President, we wish you the best of success. We are sure that you will seek the greatest development and integration in benefit of the Caribbean. And we know that your success is the success of the bank and, moreover, the success of the region. So please, Mr. President Leon, the floor is yours for addressing the remarks of the meeting.
Distinguished governors, members of the board of directors, members of the diplomatic corps, vice presidents and staff of the Caribbean Development Bank, observers, guests, representatives of the media, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a distinct pleasure and honor to deliver my first Board of Governors statement during what is projected to be a challenging but potentially impactful 5-year term as president of the Caribbean Development Bank. The confluence of unfinished structural challenges, evolving climate change, and amplifying impact of the COVID-19 pandemic leaves policymakers with little choice but to confront the creation of our future in a bold and decisive manner. The mandate establishing the Caribbean Development Bank is as important today as it was in 1969, and if suitably reimagined, can remain relevant for the next 50 years. This is the aspiration that we need to embrace, helping shine the light on and pave the road to the consensus goal of sustainable and inclusive growth. Leading this distinguished organization during these unprecedented times presents me with a unique opportunity to tackle the crippling challenges our region faces. Like my predecessors who have fought the noble cause, I seek to continue a tradition of service and commitment to the advancement and development of our region and its people. Through the legacy left behind by the astute leadership of my predecessors, namely Sir Arthur Lewis, Mr. William Dimas, Sir Neville Nichols, Dr. Compton Bourne, and Dr. William Warren Smith, And with your support, governors and directors, I wholeheartedly and confidently take hold of the baton to continue this relay race. I am aware that I have taken on a monumental task. I can state confidently, however, that I will persevere, and ably supported by the competent cadre of professionals who welcomed me into the bank almost 2 months ago, I am determined to contribute toward realizing the dreams of our people. The institutional machine of CDB is well tested and tried. The staff, namely the fuel and the lubricants, are raring to go, and the ignition spark has been lit, starting the engine to a thunderous roar. Since the first cases of COVID-19 was recorded on March 10, 2020, the pandemic has wreaked havoc on Caribbean economies and societies. First, as a health crisis, the pandemic has placed a heavy burden on health systems, likely not designed for this kind of impact. From an economic perspective, it led to a collapse of economic activity with unprecedented negative growth rates, set back the steady gains in poverty alleviation and inequality, put in slow motion the educational advancement of our youth, and underlined the pernicious vulnerability of export concentration. Our tourism-concentrated economies have been severely hit, as did counterparts worldwide, and many of our social protection systems hang precariously in the balance. While the pandemic has spared no one, there is the inescapable and untenable reality that not everyone has felt its socioeconomic consequences in the same way. Reports show that women are faring worse with regard to the economic impact of COVID-19. They generally earn less, they save less, and tend to occupy more insecure jobs or are more likely to live in poverty than men. We have seen the prevalence of unpaid care work increase significantly during the pandemic, as schools have closed and families are spending more time at home. This is having a greater impact on women who typically take on a greater burden of house tasks related to care than men. Deeper economic and social stress, coupled with movement restrictions and social isolation, have also led to an exponential rise in gender-based violence, and quite likely sown the seeds of deep emotional trauma, the effects of which may still be unfolding. To be honest, we had our fair share of structural impediments to sustainable growth before COVID-19. So while this unwelcome visitor, COVID-19 is also a wake-up call to action. It is the alarm clock heralding the time has come to shake away the feeling of slumber. When combined with the additional and multidimensional vulnerability that characterizes the countries of the region, we can only ask with some trepidation, how will we deliver on the promise of inclusive and sustainable development that is embodied in our commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals? So with that, this morning, I propose to do 3 things. One is to take stock of where we are as a region. 2, to elaborate on the role of innovation in building resilience and advancing the standards of living of our people. And 3, to outline the role of the bank in facilitating this development and define how we must transform to adequately fulfill this role. So the first I would like to speak on is the notion of evidence-based decision-making. So let us begin by assuming we can take for granted what I'd like to call the non-trivial notion of a national, even a regional consensus on the main challenges that we need to address urgently. And I say a consensus, and I'm assuming that because we need to start there, but rather than spend time trying to explain why we are not yet there, let's start by assuming we do have that consensus. So how do we forge agreement, given that consensus, on acceptable, clearly articulated, and measurable targets and anchors? A foundational principle for me would be to foster evidence-based decision-making, ensuring the analyses are robust and based on data that are accurate and of high quality. As a first pass, it appears that we do not have robust data architectures that would allow for adequate monitoring or provide tools for adaptive change. For example, where are we today with respect to the Sustainable Development Goals? Can we argue confidently about policies needed to achieve specific targets and over what period of time? Let me give you a little statistic. Since committing in 2015 to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, only 7, underline 7, of the bank's 19 BMCs have managed to submit voluntary national reviews, we'll call them VNRs later, outlining and reporting the pace of the Sustainable Development Goals implementation. Notwithstanding, BMCs in the main have sought to align and anchor their respective national development plans and policies to the SDG framework, with many establishing national bodies to oversee SDG mainstreaming and localization. Most of these countries, however, have singled out the enduring challenges of data paucity and insufficient statistical capacity in the BMCs to monitor, report, and formulate evidence-based policies which directly respond to the SDGs. Equally, concerns regarding inadequate funding and the ever-present risk of natural hazards to SDG implementation is a recurring theme throughout the BMC's voluntary national reviews, which in effect derails all efforts towards implementing the SDGs. So while credible data on the region's progress is absent, it is equally clear that actions to meet the goals are not advancing at the speed and scale required. Mind you, this concern is not unique to the Caribbean, because we've been recently reminded by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres that we should make a global plea for us to make this a decade of action. So while we are lagging, we are not the only ones lagging. But this is not an excuse for us to not do what we need to do. So our statistics, therefore, are at best, I would say, disheartening. Economic growth, which has been receding in the last 50 years, slowed to an average of 0.4% during the 10 years to 2019. The impact of COVID, especially in the tourism-dependent economies, amounted to double-digit declines in growth. With poverty rates already high, largely clustered between 20 and 40%, the pandemic has no doubt worsened those rates, moving the region further away from this SDG goal. Access to education took a blow also during the pandemic, with the digital divide retarding access, and raising concerns about the longer-term implications for human capital accumulation. We can only imagine the cumulative devastation that could ensue from a severe hurricane season, and this is yet to come. What this amounts to, and as evidenced by less onerous periods of our history, is that our ability to recover to pre-catastrophe levels is weak. It takes many years, is very costly, and we are prone to repeated events. The shocking reality is that after all of the effort and financing, we would not, underline, not have grown relative to our pre-catastrophe state. Therefore, as a starting point, I'd propose we need to measure better to target better. That includes building data architectures and databases to better inform our evidence-based decision-making. It involves improving capacity in data analytics, leveraging developments in big data and digital technology, and requires better measurement of the impact of our vulnerabilities and articulating better the nexus among enabling resilience for increasing public value, promoting priority growth-oriented investment, and managing financing needs for debt sustainability. In that regard, I propose creating a data hub at CDB. And I leave you with the following questions. Could we not be the go-to portal on regional data? Could we not design and build a distance to SDG, Sustainable Development Goals tracker that updates not only the implementation, but the associated measures of distances to relevant benchmarks? A database that could provide the quantum of financing needs and estimates of concessionary terms that could facilitate more rapid reductions in those distance metrics that we talk about. Could we not extend this to a resilience tracker that informs on various dimensions of resilience and therefore our ability to recover or sustain a growth momentum? Let me now turn to the innovation aspect of things. And there I want to leave you with the word innovation to build resilience. We've been just talking about resilience under the moniker of share to grow. So at the core, I believe that sustainable and inclusive growth requires resilience, period. Because sustainable livelihoods are founded on the principles of stable ecosystems, resilience, therefore, as I define it, needs to be interpreted broadly to include resilience in social development, and that will include health and education, resilience in institutional capacity, resilience in the environment, that includes markets and nature in terms of disasters and hazards, resilience to external shocks, trade shocks, spillovers, and by extension, resilience in the integration of all these on macro outcomes. It is only when we have resilience will we be able to sustain any momentum in growth. And the very easy way to see this is I can only keep a plane flying, and that is how I can sustain it. Anything that allows that plane to crash, it means I don't have that resilience. I'm not able to keep the plane up. And that's exactly where we are in our economies. We need to build resilience that can buffer, that can recover from shocks that hit us. If we cannot do that, there is no way we can be sustainable. We can grow, but it will not be sustained. And therefore, at the core, at the heart of all of our efforts to promote growth has to be building resilience, but not one type of resilience, resilience in all of its forms. We talk a lot about climate resilience. I'll come to this, but that is only one element of resilience. So let's continue here. The pace and state of development in the region, as I see it now, is rooted in its low resilience. For example, to global shocks and natural hazard events. The transmission of such shocks is often acute and protracted because of the high level of export concentration that characterizes the region. The main source of this export concentration is a lack of competitiveness that leaves countries specializing in exports that rely largely on natural endowments. By increasing productivity and reducing costs, or introducing new products or product varieties, innovation therefore promotes export diversification. This export diversification generates resilience by reducing the susceptibility of national output to the fortunes of one or two industries. Resilience, however, can only be built, can only be sustained if we can innovate. And that is where we bring in innovation into the picture. So, to repeat, resilience requires innovation. So, we can summarize this by saying eliminating poverty, advancing standards of living, delivering equitable prosperity by ensuring that no one is left behind will therefore depend critically on our ability to innovate. So what exactly is innovation? Innovation describes the development and application of ideas and technologies that improve goods and services or make their production more efficient. I want to underscore here that innovation ultimately depends not only on inventors. A common myth that innovation is always an only invention. It does not depend only on inventors, but equally on the creativity of potential users of new technology to find new ways to put existing concepts and ideas to productive use. This is the type of innovation we would like to foster. This is the type of innovation we need to embrace because inventions come once in a lifetime. This type of innovation we can do every day. And by doing it every day, we can help build resilience and therefore provide the foundation on which we can actually grow economies. So the role of innovation as a driver of economic prosperity is well established. So I don't want to take any credit for this. This is well known. Why do I say that? Both neoclassical growth and endogenous growth theories have emphasized technological advancement, of which innovation is a critical part. One of the hallmarks of innovation is its ability to utilize limited resources to expand production possibility frontiers, resulting ultimately in higher levels of outputs. A concept which should be particularly attractive to and be embraced by the Caribbean, given the scarce resource endowments that we have. Now, given that we do have a rationale for innovation, what can be called healthy innovation? And we have a term for this. We'll say that we have a healthy innovation ecosystem, underline ecosystem, because it is all combined. A healthy innovation ecosystem is one that incorporates the many aspects of resilience that I mentioned earlier. For example, the Global Innovation Index includes institutional features such as the regulatory environment, the environment within which human capital is created and research and development is undertaken, information and communications infrastructure, the quality, size, and sophistication of markets, and the level of business sophistication. All of those define a healthy innovation ecosystem. All of those define resilience that we need to proceed on. And therefore, all of those deserve our attention if we are to build resilience through the medium of innovation. So while I do not intend to dwell on every aspect of resilience and the innovation nexus that it is linked to, the same principles that I've outlined above will apply in general, and I will below talk a little more on specific aspects of innovation that I think we should be focused on. So to begin, innovation can be operationalized. So we've talked of the need for innovation. We've talked of the organizational and healthy ecosystem of innovation. So we want to move one step further and say, how do we operationalize innovation? And I say we can do this through a framework or process that I have labeled KIDS. Knowledge for K, innovation diagnostics, I and D, and strategies for S. Now, this is important to understand this as a process, but it is a process that is so encompassing that it can be applied in any of the spheres of innovation resilience that we have spoken about before. But I want to walk you through one, what it means and how it can be applied in the specific area of innovation in education. So the KIDS process is first and foremost flexible and outcome-based. It is agile. It can be applied at the firm, the sector, or the economy-wide level. It can leverage strategic international partnerships. It can foster the development of institutional capacity, and it can promote backward and forward linkages. So at one stroke, it can do all of the things that we are saying we are missing, but as a process to be applied. So therefore, as a tool, it is bounded only by the imagination of our people. Only by the imagination of our people. And it has the potential to create what I would like to call the industrialization of knowledge. What do I mean by industrialization of knowledge? The use of knowledge to create industries. In the same way that we can use capital, we can use inventions, we can use labor to create industries. So it's the industrialization of knowledge. KIDS operates in 3 interacting phases, each of which can be used separately or together to create high value added segments of the supply chain. And therefore, it has the potential to unlock economic diversification. As an illustration, application of knowledge accumulation, that's the K part of KIDS, which is gathering, organizing, refining, and disseminating of information. That principle can be used to spawn products, industries in searching, scanning, classification, and archiving technologies and products. Now you just think of all of those I've talked about, how we can utilize those just to do the idea of the knowledge accumulation. Second, the innovation diagnostics the I and the D in kids, fosters discovery. Fosters discovery. By establishing a synthesis of success factors from the accumulated knowledge. I just want to stop here for a little. I want to repeat this. We have collated information, stored it, classified it, organized it. And now we want to pull from it, create value from it. The creation of value now is, what can we do with that knowledge that we have already accumulated? And we can sift, we can draw, we can pull out success factors, why these were successful, issues that arose, why they arose. And now we can use those to move to another level. But it also provides us at that stage where we are just in the discovery phase, and my legal friends will understand discovery. While we are in the discovery phase, what we can do is we can use the issue of partnerships. Partnerships in tertiary institutions, not just in the region, globally. And those partnerships now can be used to promote centers of excellence. If we can move into centers of excellence, why can't we horizontally integrate this into knowledge tourism? All in the quest for discovery. But that discovery is promoting, it's spawning another set of industries based on the concept of knowledge. But now we don't have to end there. We've accumulated, we have discovered, we know what is a success factor or set of success factors. We can now take it to the next stage, the S in kids, strategies. We can now mold strategies, transform the synthesized knowledge that we have to create market-specific, viable business propositions. And those business propositions that now come out of, based on the knowledge we've accumulated, on the discovery of the success factors, that now can be channeled into strategies of viable businesses. We don't even need to do it ourselves. Why can't we sell it? We can sell it at home. We can sell it regionally. We can sell it globally. We don't have to hug it. We can share to grow. We can sell it and let somebody else do it. We have the patent and we can simply proceed to the next item. And guess the big story here. We do not have any shortage, no shortage, because the entire global space now is our playground, the playground of the infinite supply of knowledge. It is only now, how do we manage, how do we manipulate that knowledge? By accumulating it, discovering it, and creating strategies from it. And that is what I'm referring to in the industrialization of knowledge. We can create industries that is at the high value added level that can proceed and leverage our educational acumen as a people and transform the region into a different space that can be a global player in almost any topic that we so choose. Now, why am I so confident about this? I am confident because I dare say that as a people, we do not have a comparative disadvantage in generating knowledge. We do not have a comparative disadvantage. We can say we have a disadvantage in natural resources. We have a disadvantage in size. We have a disadvantage maybe in technology. But in the ability to generate knowledge, as a people, we do not have a comparative disadvantage. And if we do not have a comparative disadvantage, we can start from a level playing field and we can excel. We can do just as well as anybody else. So, given we do not have that comparative disadvantage, we can take this concept of kids, and we can apply it. And as I said, we can apply it in a modular way on one of the three phases, but we can apply it in any field of interest. And especially now, given digital technologies that we have, I say we can tap into the infinite supply of global knowledge. And the infinite supply of global knowledge is very reminiscent to the Sir Arthur Lewis, our first president's notion of unlimited supplies of labor. You recall it was the unlimited supplies of labor that drove the industrialization from agriculture into manufacturing, into the urban cities. Here we are saying, let's use the infinite supply of knowledge, transform it into industries, industrialization of a higher level that we can actually use. And we can harness, in doing so, as I said, the unbounded imagination of our people. So it's important to note that this absence of comparative disadvantage that I spoke to requires that our education systems need to promote and promote even more learning processes that are based on inquiry, discovery, and problem solving. In other words, we have to rethink, remap how we teach, how we learn in our school systems, because we have to be in the mode where we can take, we can discover, we can create. So that is why the education system needs to move into that particular line. And therefore, I propose as well today for the region a long-term investment focus on innovation in education. And that will build squarely in the zone of social resilience. So having recognized then the importance of innovation, how do we create an appropriate environment for promoting and sustaining innovation in the region? We have some experience that we can talk about. Global experience suggests that those countries that create a healthy environment for innovation, remember I talked of healthy innovation ecosystems, the countries that create a healthy environment for innovation are more prosperous and more resilient. Such countries include Switzerland, Sweden, and Finland, to name a few. But it is not limited only to large countries. Small states such as Singapore, which consistently has been among the top 10 innovative states, are also consistent high performers that demonstrate the strong link between innovation, resilient economic growth, and development. So much like the recently published Cornwall Consensus that identified roles for the G7 governments in fostering a climate of inclusion and innovation, that was just done recently, Caribbean governments are called upon today to cultivate a regulatory environment that encourages entrepreneurship and innovation, because this is the platform that we need to build. There is need for a financial system with sufficient depth to accommodate appropriate levels of risk-taking, education systems that place value on critical, innovative thinking and reward students accordingly, and a Caribbean society that embraces a culture of creative disruption. We cannot be willing to innovate and not be willing to fail. We cannot be willing to innovate and not be willing to take risk. We cannot be willing to innovate and to simply sit back and think we can get there in one step short. I believe that a critical weakness in the environment for innovation that we will need to address is the issue of individual market size. Here we've talked a lot about small sizes. Is that a limit to innovation? My sense is that successive generations of regional leaders have recognized this, and they have endeavored to create first the Caribbean Community and Common Market, and subsequently the CARICOM Single Market and Economy. So I'd like to equally say to you today that if we are to deliver on the post-COVID acceleration that is required to achieve the SDGs, we must spare no effort in completing the full establishment of the CSME. No effort should be spared. We need to take the CSME to completion. Let me further state that it is not only about creating a larger market. I introduced this concept because of size. It's not only about creating a larger market to facilitate scale. It is also about partnering with the private and other non-public sectors to co-create markets and institutions aimed at achieving a common purpose. Recall when I started, I said, let's assume we have a consensus. Having that consensus allows us to then call and bring together the collaboration needed between the public and the non-public sectors. And it is only working together to that common purpose will we end the public sector not trusting the private sector sector not trusting the public sector, and the two are at loggerheads with each other, thinking that they are doing things of their own. It is a common purpose. The common purpose is the growth and development, the welfare of our people. And if we can work together in that frame, then we will get past a very large problem we have in not having collaboration in innovation. So it is this investing in and harnessing of regional public goods that will create an enabling ecosystem for innovation. So that concludes my section on innovation. I want to talk briefly now about the role of CDB. Where does CDB fit into this bigger picture? So the mission of the bank is to achieve social and economic development. And in this regard, the bank and its BMCs, the borrowing member countries, have signed on to the Sustainable Development Goals. So I would argue that our current task is to systematically take stock of where we are with respect to the SDGs and assess the level of effort that it will take to get us there. This requires a number of things that I'd like to enumerate. First, we must properly map the theory of change between those goals and activities and outputs that we must undertake. Second, we must establish the volume of lending that is required on these activities and outputs. Third, we must map the development financing metrics that will get us to those outputs and activities. And then we need to determine the level of resources that CDB must mobilize as part of this effort. And once we know the level of resources that CDB needs to mobilize, we therefore finally need to determine how we are going to go about mobilizing these resources. So these are the 5 big planks that CDB would need to undertake to be aligned with its actual goals. And I think by now you know where I'm going with this next. Innovation, innovation, innovation will play a critical role in each of those 5 points that we talk about. So first, CDB must be a vibrant part of an innovation ecosystem, a healthy one, that drives knowledge products in facilitating these efforts. Specifically, knowledge products will be important in areas such as the theory of change underpinning the goals, the role of the public sector in investment, governance structures and public sector regulatory frameworks, the monitoring and implementation of systems, and financing modalities and instruments. All of those are areas that we can advance knowledge products in the context of innovation that can help advance. Therefore, the bank must be a thought leader on those issues, but from a regional context. So that's the first goal I think CDB needs to set itself, and a goal we need to start yesterday, becoming that thought leader in the knowledge space that can help push the region to the next level. Second, the bank will have to play a role in mobilizing finance to upgrade the infrastructure and institutions that are important in improving competitiveness and productivity, thereby increasing innovation and resilience, driving growth, and consequently achieving the SDG goals. Now, our preliminary estimates, and I wanted to bring this in there as a sort of teaser. Our preliminary estimates suggest that to reach the goal of halving poverty by 2030 would require more than doubling of average CDB lending. Now that says CDB lending would need to double. I'm going to rephrase that. Would need to double and more to meet the poverty goal of reducing poverty levels by 1/2 by 2030. But that's only one of 17 SDG goals. One of 17 SDG goals. So just think the size of the problem that we face, the magnitude of the task that we have at hand. And what I think this tells us very clearly is there has to be a need, a pressing need for multiple sources of funding, multiple financing instruments, as well as, and I'm going to underline this one as well as a clear identification of the role that CDB is expected to play in marshalling this development finance. So this whole innovation in the financing space is a big elephant in the room, maybe our greatest challenge, and by extension, the highest point CDB needs to rise to remain effective. I dare say, governors and directors, such considerations require further and much deeper discussion on what I'd like to describe as the fit for purpose size of the bank. Fit for purpose size of the bank. If we know the purpose, if we know the goal, we need to ask, what is the fit for purpose size of the institution? So I'd like to put this on the table because I think it is the most important conversation that we need to have. And it's about CDB, it's about the region, and it's about how CDB fulfills its mandate for the region. The third area that we need to focus on is the susceptibility of the region to natural hazard events and the increasing intensity and frequency of these natural hazard events, which result purely from climate change. And that in itself will play a role in defining where CDB ends up in this size consideration. So natural hazards typically, and I think we should understand what this does, natural hazards typically reduce your capital stock. Hurricane wipes out a country. 90% of the houses are gone. The infrastructure is gone. that needs to be replaced. But not only is the stock wiped out, it reduces the stream of output from the reduced capital stock. So what that actually means is that coming out of a natural hazard, your capital needs are magnified much, much more than you needed before. And you would think because your needs are so much higher, what you need is lower cost to allow you to undertake that investment. So it should be more capital at lower cost, but that is not what actually normally obtains. What happens is in standard market dynamics, where increased investments are needed, the perception of risk would work against you, and your rate of interest is actually higher in the wake of a natural hazard because your risk is deemed to have increased, and therefore would push those rates to levels that are adverse to the very debt dynamics that you need, given that you are already producing less, your interest rates are higher, and you end up in this vicious cycle of debt dynamics that you cannot pull yourself out. So you have a situation where you get hit, you go down in terms of the ability to pull yourself out. But the duration, the time it takes you to pull yourself out, the need for more capital, which will come at only a higher cost, which will put you deeper into debt, the time it takes to pull you out of this, which I'm calling the duration of the vulnerability drag, is such that you spend 4 to 5 years, maybe more, borrowing, spending, not to grow, but simply to get you one part of the way back to where you started. So pre the event, you were up here, you crash, and now you're going to spend 5 years money not to get you even back to where you started, most cases below. And those 5 years are not growth years. In other words, we have spent 5 years of money to make zero progress on growth. Zero progress on growth. And that, I think, is an important point we need to understand. That there is market failure, and the expected losses associated with those natural hazard events. This increased the level of financing that static development requires in a way that would suggest countries cannot actually handle. So a clear narrative, therefore, from this operational experience that I speak of is we have to look at the relationship between vulnerability to those events, what happens when an event occurs, the cost, the duration of taking us back to where we were before the event occurred, before we can even start to talk about growth, because growth has to be relative to where you were before the event. And it is these last 5, 7 or more years that is really crippling our ability to move the needle, the trajectory on growth in a very significant way. Now, I've said a lot about things that we should be doing, but there is one thing that we have not done well, and we should call it out, and that is the operational experience so far tells us we have a large implementation deficit. We are not implementing projects. We are starting, we are lagging, we are slow motion implementers. And so that is something we need to address. And so the bank will need a strong focus on innovation, underline innovation, to build resilience in implementation capacity in our borrowing member countries. And so that's a big area of focus that we need to do. How do we change the trajectory on implementation capacity? Because only by doing this will we accelerate the pace of development. And only by doing this will we be able to say categorically that we have increased the effectiveness of every dollar that the bank lends, or every dollar of a grant we receive, or every dollar of a donor's contribution that went into the project that was to be implemented, but was implemented too late or too slow. So institutional strengthening and adherence to the highest governance standards would have to be, for me, another key area of priority that the bank has to engage in. So we've talked of finance, we've talked of implementation capacity, we have looked at how the bank can do knowledge products. All of those are areas of priority that will help in the innovation to build resilience, to generate growth concept that we would like to do. CDB of itself, as we've heard from the governor from Italy, CDB of itself is not pure virgin state. We have issues that we need to solve as well. And so we can argue that if the bank is to function as an effective development partner, moving towards the SDGs, and if we want it to remain relevant, and we want it to be fit for purpose, we want it to be appropriately sized, we want it to be skilled, we want it to have appropriate structure, it then becomes incumbent on us to promote internal structures that will better equip the bank to meet the needs of the BMCs. Okay, we need to meet the needs of the BMCs. Our internal structures, our governance, our processes need to be modified, need to be made more efficient, need to be more responsive as a means of generating an institution worthy of the new charge, the new mandate that we speak of. So the creation, therefore, of internal ecosystems for generating ideas that will lead to efficiencies, therefore will be an important thing for the bank to actually focus on. Appropriate structures that optimally leverage the experience and expertise of staff to produce, we said, knowledge products is clearly an area that will be of immediate focus of ours. So in conclusion, I have tried to walk you through the foundational principles of the need for evidence-based decision-making, the need to embrace innovation to build resilience as the pathway to growth, and the specific roles that the CDB will need to engage in and within its own selves, its internal structures, as a means of closing that loop and allowing us to move the needle of development forward. And so in conclusion, I would like to leave you with this final thought. I think it is fair to say that our challenges are clear. It is equally clear that our resolve is resolute. It is equally clear to me, and I think the staff would agree, our passion is fired up, and we will aim to be good stewards in serving the members of this distinguished institution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your remarks. I think if I may just make a few comments after what you have said, I think you have a very good diagnosis of what some of the members of the board and directors have been conveying about the bank. Of course, the evidence-based decision-making, it's important for our countries, for the region, and it's going to allow us to move forward to achieve development. Of course, innovation, it's also a key, and we're glad to hear that we're also going to find innovative mechanisms to tackle the problems that we all know that the region have. So happy to listen to you in this initial diagnosis and the actions that will come forward in the coming months. We're looking forward to continue working and to put all this into practice in the benefit of the bank, and of course, moreover, in the development of the region and its population. So thank you very much, Mr. President. Now, moving forward with the agenda, I give the floor to the Governor of Jamaica to please give his report of the Procedures Committee of the Board of Governors. Please, Governor of Jamaica, the floor is yours.
Madam Chair, Governors, the Procedures Committee met on Tuesday, June 29th, 2021 at 9:10 a.m. and the report of this committee dated June 30th, 2021 is before you. Staff informed the committee that the Vice Chair, the Governor for Mexico, would chair the proceedings in the absence of the Chairman, the Governor for Barbados, the Honorable Mia Amor Motley, Prime Minister, who was unable to attend due to an unexpected emergency. I have the honor, Madam Chair, to table the report on behalf of the committee and move that the Board of Governors adopt the recommendations contained therein. Madam Chair, the Procedures Committee submits the following report. One is the schedule of the annual meeting. The committee agreed to the schedule of the meeting as set out in the paper BG 51-1 and provisions relating to the conduct of the meeting, the agenda of the meeting, the annual report for 2020, the audited financial statements, and allocation of net income for 2020, and other documents that have been tabled. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Governor. Thank you very much to everybody for its participation today. I apologize for the delay we had at the beginning of the meeting due to technical issues. I now close the meeting for today. I know we do have a youth forum coming after, so you are all invited to participate in the forum later today. But thank you very much once again for your participation, and see you tomorrow for the day 2 of the annual meetings. Have a good day, everybody.
Mr. President, may I firstly congratulate you on your appointment and thank you for your opening address about the Caribbean recovery. Fellow governors, bank management, thank you for your partnership to help Caribbean countries succeed. As I make my remarks, I would like to highlight three areas, three priorities, three headlines from the UK written statement. Firstly, about the pandemic response. Secondly, on climate change. And thirdly, on bank transformation and reform. First and foremost, we urge the bank to maintain a focus on the pandemic response. We all know that the Caribbean has been hard hit by the pandemic. Indeed, I've found that in my various bilateral conversations I've had with fellow colleagues and ministers across the Caribbean. And we also know that the IMF forecasts that countries dependent on